Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Lost in Translation show, where we explore the past to help people understand what is happening to them today. It's a beautiful day here in the California wine country, where I've been visiting Matt Dakin. Some of you might remember him as a former show guest. He's a retired fire captain who focuses on researching some very interesting topics. Matt will discuss being a national instead of relinquishing control of our lives to the private foreign corporation called the United States that is based in Washington, D.C., and only has jurisdiction over the 10 miles squared of that area. Matt is a national and no longer belongs to the corporation that most of the population lives under. And yes, that means you and me and most of the people listening to this show. His insight about these topics might change the way you think about reality that most of us truly exist in right now. Before we get started, please remember to like, share, and subscribe. This really helps me out. And if you would like to support the channel, my Venmo and Zelle address are listed in the comments section below. Thank you for your support. So welcome, Matt.
Thank you, Simone. It's good to be back.
Oh, thank you. So, why don't you just give us a brief overview of what status you have and why people might choose this route?
Okay. Well, I'm what's called a national of the United States of America. It's the same as a state citizen. Prior to the 14th Amendment in 1868, this was what everybody's status was. The 14th Amendment, which was created by Congress in 1868, they created the U.S. citizen. And with that U.S. citizen, they also created the civil rights for the U.S. citizen. And he or she who creates pretty much owns. So if you look at the Declaration of Independence, it talks about we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal and they're endowed by their creator with certain inalienable rights. And those are the pursuit of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And to ensure those rights, to secure those rights, they institute governments. And so the founders of our nation here, the United States of America, created the Constitution, and that was to secure those inalienable rights. We often hear about people talking about constitutional rights. Well, the Constitution really doesn't give us any rights. What it does is it secures our inalienable rights. The only rights it gives is under like the 14th Amendment. If you're a US citizen, then it'll give you your civil rights. But we don't want to be 14th Amendment US citizens because then we're putting ourselves underneath the government instead of being the bosses of the government. And the government is there to serve our needs, to protect our rights, to secure our rights as we the people. And so that's really, we want to make sure that, and it's all been done by deception. It's been very deceptive how it's been done. So, and they've done it through the use of terms that we don't really understand what we're saying. I mean, when we identify ourselves as a US citizen, which most of us have done all our lives on any application, driver's license, whatever, a 1040 form, tax form, we think that means being an American, which it really doesn't. So if you look up and I'll give you some definitions. If you guys have something to write with, you might want to write this down and look it up. So if you look up in Title 28, 300215A, under the definitions, it says United States means a federal corporation. Okay, because it is a federal corporation. United States is a federal corporation. And then if you go to the Uniform Commercial Code under 9-307H, it says the United States is located in the District of Columbia. Okay, so that corporation, the federal corporation, is located in the District of Columbia. And then you go down to the Constitution, you go to Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17 of the Constitution, and it talks about the limited jurisdiction of Congress. And it says the Congress shall have the power to exercise exclusive legislation in all cases whatsoever over such district, not exceeding 10 miles square. That's the District of Columbia, and that's their jurisdiction, is that 10-mile square area. As may by session of particular states and the acceptance of Congress become the seat of the government of the United States, and to exercise like authority over all places purchased by the consent of the legislature of the state in which the same shall be for the erection of forts, magazines, arsenals, dockyards, and other needful buildings. So that's it. That's their jurisdiction, that 10-mile square area, or for areas in the states for those needful buildings, those federal buildings. And that is it. So we have all been tricked, duped into saying that we are US citizens, that we live in the United States, not knowing really what that means. And the solution is actually pretty easy. Once you start studying this, understand it, we all have a right to self-determination. So it is our choice. We're born with those inalienable rights, as talked about in the Declaration of Independence. So they can't be taken from us, but we can give them up willingly through deception, through not understanding what we're doing. And so we can take them back because they're ours and they've always been ours. And so how that is done is through an affidavit, a notarized affidavit to the US Secretary of State, stating that we are choosing to be one of the people from whatever state we're in, and not a 14th Amendment US citizen with civil rights, but we're choosing to be one of the people. I'm one of the people of California, a national with inalienable rights given to me by my creator. So that's actually is all that is really needed. And then stand on those rights, understand them, and undo any other contracts that you've signed into that diminish your status and make you a federal citizen. We don't want to be federal citizens. If, unless we're living in DC and we're born in DC, we want to be state citizens. That gives us all our inalienable rights that the Constitution is supposed to secure and protect for us. So does that answer your question?
That's a great start. And I know you've got some interesting stuff about the Constitution. So many people in society throw around the Constitution in public discourse without really understanding what the founding documents actually say. So can you tell us more about what you found when you actually studied the Constitution?
Yeah, well, the Constitution is a great document, but we have to understand what it is and our relationship to it. It is a limit. It is a limit for the public servants. It's for the government. It limits their authority to infringe upon our inalienable rights. That's why it says the right to bear arms, the right of free speech. These are all our rights. We have rights to pretty much do anything we want that is not infringing upon anybody else's rights. We're not hurting anybody else, not infringing on their rights. We are free men and women to do mostly what we want, as long as we're not endangering or harming anybody else. Then there's pretty much, we're free to do what we want. And the Constitution gives specific limitations of what the government can do to infringe upon those inalienable rights, but it does not give us rights unless we are identifying as a US citizen. Then we don't have those inalienable rights. Then we have civil rights that are given to us by the government. And I much prefer having inalienable rights that were given to me by my creator, and not civil rights that were given to me by the government. The government is supposed to work for me, work for us, we the people. And that's the relationship that I choose to have. And we should all choose to have that relationship.
I think you've got the second paragraph of the Constitution. I was sat in on an interview you did yesterday. Do you think you could read that for my viewers?
Yeah, I think you mean the Declaration of Independence,
Is it the
or
Declaration? Yes, sorry. Yeah, the Declaration of
yeah, the second
Independence.
paragraph of the Declaration of Independence. It says, I started to read a little bit. It says, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men and women, or that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. Okay, and that's a key, that last sentence, the consent of the governed. So everything is by consent. And what's happened is they've turned everything, they've created the US citizen, and then they created a corporation. In 1871, they created the District of Columbia. That's a 10-mile square area. And there's a corporation called the United States that is inside of that 10-mile square area in that corporation. It's called United States. So, and under that corporation, there are political subdivisions such as State of California. And these all have DUNS numbers. United States Federal Corporation in the District of Columbia has a Dun and Bradstreet number because these are corporations, these are businesses. And same with State of California. It is a corporation, it is a political subdivision of United States Corporation. Same with State of Nevada, all the states. These are all corporations. And inside, under those corporations, there are other political subdivisions, such as the county of this or that, or city of anything that's been incorporated. So these are all just corporations. And they've got us believing when we read things that, United States, we think that means the country, that union of all those 50 states. We believe that's what it means when they're usually talking about that federal corporation that's in District of Columbia. That doesn't apply to us if we're one of the people and we haven't gotten tricked into being a US citizen.
Did you happen to see the inaugural invitations?
I did not.
They said Washington City.
Yes, and that's what it used to be before it was the District of Columbia, and that was interesting. There's been a few different things that I've seen that are very interesting. Yes, so I did see that.
Now, that's just a mystery that we'll have to keep investigating because I'm sure it has some meaning. And I believe, and I think it's been reported a lot, that the Washington, D.C. Corporation went bankrupt several years ago. So I don't know if we're just being recaptured into a different corporation or we're being actually returned back to our original constitution. So that's something that you and I may discuss at a future point, although we would still be under the same corporatocracy, correct?
Well, possibly. Yeah, so you just brought up a good point that I'd like to state. We are a republic, and as you quite often mention, not a democracy. It's not stated anywhere in any of the founding documents. We're a republic, and that republic still exists. It has not gone anywhere. It's just become pretty vacant because everyone's been tricked into this corporate system. So in 1871, they created a constitution of the United States that didn't really replace the 1789 Constitution for the United States because it's still there, it still exists. But the Constitution of 1871, the Constitution of the United States, is what everybody uses and everybody thinks is the current. It's the corporate constitution. It is a corporate constitution, and the same thing for like California state. There's an 1849 Constitution for California that still exists. It's still there for the Republic. And then there's the 1879 California Constitution, or for the state of California, which is a corporation. And if you look online, California Constitution, that one will come up. The 1879 Constitution will come up. That is for the corporation, the state of California Corporation. And if you look in that, it'll tell you the boundaries of the state are those stated in the Constitution of 1849. So it refers to the Constitution of 1849 in the 1879 California Constitution. And it states that it says, as modified pursuant to statute, and this is under Article 3, Section 2 of the California Constitution. So that's the Constitution. When you look up online, it'll be the 1879 Constitution. You look up Article 3, Section 2 of it, and it'll say the boundaries of the state are those stated in the Constitution of 1849. It wouldn't state that if the Constitution of 1849 wasn't still valid, if it had been replaced. It hasn't been replaced. The Republic still exists. It's just the people have been tricked out of the Republic and into this corporate system. So I think that's really important, and you can look that up.
Well, are there any other references? I know you've given a few, but is there anything else maybe you want to point out to people? And I'll go ahead and put some of these references in the comment section so if people didn't have a chance to jot it down.
Yeah, yeah. So they're very tricky. They're very tricky with the way they do things. When you see the word state in any of the codes and statutes, you'll see in different places two different ways. State with a capital S, that's they're talking about the corporation. And then when you see it with a small s for state, then that's the de jure, that's the republic. So you can look up under 8 CFR 1101:21. It says the term national means a person owing permanent allegiance to a state, and that's with a small s. So that is the republic, the de jure state, not the corporate state. And then there's interesting if you look at Title 28, 1746. This is a good one because it really, when you study it, you can really see the difference. What I tell people is anytime in any of the codes and statutes, you see the word United States, if you substitute United States for federal corporation, things make a lot more sense. So under Title 28, 1746, it's talking about sworn affidavits. And it has two different ways of doing an affidavit. And so there's one, it says, if executed without the United States. Okay, now what did I say the United States is? It's a federal corporation. So if executed without the federal corporation, then you do it this way. I declare or certify or verify I state under penalty of perjury under the laws of the United States of America that the foregoing is true and correct, executed on whatever date. So that's how you do it if you're without the United States, which is a federal corporation. Then you're going to say, I declare under the laws of the United States of America. And then the second choice is if it's executed within the United States, which what's that mean? The federal corporation. So if it's executed within the federal corporation called the United States, its territories, possessions, or commonwealths, then you write, I declare or certify, verify, or state under penalty of perjury that the foregoing is true and correct, executed on whatever date. You don't have to put under the laws of the United States of America because you're in that other jurisdiction, that federal corporation called United States. So right there in black and white, you can clearly see the distinction between the United States, the federal corporation, and then the country, the United States of America. So it makes it very clear. So I'm trying to think of anything else that I haven't put in here. But if you just go through these and look these up, it's going to make a lot of sense where you look up, United States means a federal corporation as referenced in Title 28, 3002, 15A. And where's the United States located? The United States is located in the District of Columbia as referenced in the Uniform Commercial Code 9-307H. And then the term state with a capital S includes any territory or possession of the United States as referenced in Title 4, Chapter 4, subsection 110D. Okay, well, we know the United States, their jurisdiction is that 10-mile square area and then any other territories. So anytime you see the word state with a capital S, it's either in there or one of those territories of that corporation that's located in that 10-mile square area. So really, they have such limited jurisdiction, but they've got us admitting that we live in that state and that we are US citizens. So they've got us agreeing to being something we're not, or we are, I guess, if we're agreeing to it, we, in a sense we are, but we don't need to be. So.
Okay. I have another question about this. I've interviewed you and some other people on this topic, and there was just some outstanding questions I had, and probably a lot of the listeners. Does being a national affect your ability to receive your Social Security and other benefits that are in the DC corporation?
Absolutely not. That's Social Security is an insurance program. You paid into that. So everything's contract. Everything with everything in this system, it's all contract, all commercial contract. And that's a contract and you paid into it and they owe you. that money. So you absolutely are not giving anything up. You're just gaining your freedom by doing this. The only thing that you don't get is you don't get any freebies like Medicaid. You don't get any free government handouts, but these other things like Social Security, Medicare, these are all contractual that you paid into.
Okay, so that's good. I was going to ask you because particularly for seniors, a lot of my viewers
Yeah,
are seniors. That won't affect their Medicare then.
correct.
They'll still be entitled to that. So that's
Yeah.
really good. I think that's a concern that a lot of people get confused because, like you said, it's very blurred and we haven't been taught to understand the true state of affairs, as they say. So, another question is, do you have a different passport? And if you do travel outside the United States to a foreign country and need assistance, do you have the same rights? How does that work?
Yeah. So this corporate government that issues the passports, they have a duty to not only issue passports to their corporate citizens, but to nationals. And it even says on the passport, US citizens slash nationals. So they have a duty to give nationals. We, the people, created the government to secure our rights, to protect our rights, and to do these types of things for us. So it doesn't, you get a passport. The key is when in applying for a passport, they're pretty sneaky about the way they're trying to box you into being a US citizen, but they give you a spot where you can attach explanatory statements. And then so if you apply for a passport, you want to attach explanatory statements and being very clear, letting them know that you are not a 14th Amendment US citizen, that you are one of the people. We are also called state citizens. A state citizen is the same as a national, like a California state citizen. That's different than being a citizen of the state of California, which is a corporation. So they're very tricky, but
All
we're
right.
state citizens. We're all state citizens, and that's what everyone was prior to this, prior to 1871, the Organic Act, which created DC, and prior to the 14th Amendment. We were all state citizens, as long as the state was created.
All right. Do you think there's anything you can add or a question I might have forgotten to ask about what's going on? If people wanted to move forward on this type of thing, is it prohibitive cost-wise?
Oh gosh, no, it's all it is really it's a note the cost of a notary and the cost of postage of sending it off to the US Secretary of State. There's a website, it's Roger Sales has a website and he has templates about halfway down the page on how to do this. And very simply, it's just a couple sentences basically stating that you're choosing to be one of the people of the several states with all your God-given inalienable rights and not a 14th Amendment citizen under the purview of the government. So it's really that simple. Get it, you notarize it, send it in. You can do your passport if you want to do it that way. That's even then you can do a FOIA request or a Privacy Act request after you do that for um, the documents they use to process your application, and you can get all that back, which I got that show my explanatory statement stating that I'm not a 14th Amendment US citizen. But it's really as easy as that. So it's doesn't cost much at all. And so the matrixdocs.com, the THEMATRIX that's with Roger Sales. That has templates about halfway down the page and has a ton of good information. He has a radio show every morning, 8 to 10 Pacific time. And there's some other educatedinlaw.org is another great website. And then We the People, the number 2.us is another great website to learn about this stuff. And it's a lot. I've given a lot of information out, so you can go back and look this stuff over. But it's really not that hard, and it's very cheap to get out. And it's a lot of relearning or unlearning to do, and really to take our freedom back and learn how everything that they're doing, everything is commercial. It's all based on commercial contracts. It's all commerce, and just understanding the system. So I hope that answered your question.
I think they phrase it as we're trapped in banking and shipping wars. Is that a way to say it?
Yeah, I mean, it is. It's everything. It's all about contracts. It's all, I don't get in and differentiate whether it's admiralty or this or that. I know it's commerce. It's, it's all contracts. God, I can't think of the right word I'm trying to think of right now, but yeah, it's all based on contracts. Everything is based on contracts, and they've contracted us in through deception. And so understanding these definitions of these terms that they've used, what the United States really means. Oh, it's a federal corporation located in DC and where it's located. And even the word person, they use, I have Black's Law Dictionary that says person, let's see, have it right here somewhere. Oh, corporations are persons. So this is out of my Black's Law revised fourth edition on page 1299. It says corporations are persons, as that word is used in the first clause of the 14th Amendment. Okay, in the 14th Amendment says all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. So right there. Black's Law, revised fourth edition, page 1299. Corporations are persons, as that word is used in the first clause of the 14th Amendment. I mean, that's kind of mind blowing. They're getting us to agree to be these corporate entities. That's what they've done. And that's why when we're dealing with the government, they'll always see our names in all capital letters because that designates corporate entity. And they're a corporation, so they can only contract with other corporations or corporate entities. They cannot contract with live men and women.
So really the purpose of this is taxation, correct?
It's control. Taxation is part of that control. It's control and jurisdiction. It's getting us under the government and they control, and then they can legislate and tell us what we can and can't do and give us the license to do everything that we should be able to do without a license. That's what this is. That's the result of this. They can license everything. They can license every activity that we want to do once they have jurisdiction over us through the 14th Amendment, because
Like
we are
fighting
their.
wars we don't believe in,
Yeah, yeah,
sending
absolutely.
our youth off to die in countries they were never taught existed.
Everything. I mean, the license, to think of any license. We have a right to private contract and do pretty much what we want as long as we're not infringing upon others and hurting others. And the right to travel is one. That's been clearly multiple Supreme Court cases saying we all have a right to travel. We don't need a license. So these are things that these are inherent rights. That's a mobility. If we don't have right to move from one place to the other without a license, then how free are we? So,
And
but if
now
we
what about
don't,
taxation?
if we don't exercise our rights, we have no rights. So taxation, yeah, taxation is all voluntary, and even for U.S. citizens, it's mostly voluntary for U.S. citizens. But it's once you're not a U.S. citizen, again, this is a foreign corporation. So if you look right on your tax form, it's for U.S. citizens and residents. Residents of what? Residents of the United States in that federal corporation. So and then you start looking at, okay, well, what if I was a U.S. citizen, or what if I did live there? Then you go in deeper into the Internal Revenue Code, then you just look at what the definition of trade or business of public office. And so it's no, most people do not are not required to file or to file or pay income tax. If you're a U.S. citizen, you might have a duty to file, but your income, most people's income isn't actually income as defined per the Internal Revenue Code. And then if you're not a U.S. citizen, then unless you have gains, capital gains, stock gains for corporate gains coming from within DC or the United States corporation, then you're gonna not have any tax liability. So, but I'm not giving any tax advice. Look this up on your own, but it's all right there. It's understanding these definitions.
And people would look that up under the Internal Revenue Code? Or
Yeah, you look it up and look right on the tax form. Or look at the right at the who's responsible to file. Who's responsible to file? It's going to say U.S. citizens or residents, probably. Well, what does that mean? What do we say a U.S. citizen is? Um, so we're foreign. Once you do this, you're actually foreign to the federal government. Once you become a state citizen, you're actually a foreigner to that federal corporation, that federal government located in DC.
Well, do you have any way that our listeners might be able to get a hold of you? I think you've given a lot of information today. There's probably going to be someone who has a few questions. Do you have an email or something we can contact you?
Yeah. They can contact me at my email, which is Matthew Dakin. So it's spelled MATTHEWDAKIN at protonmail.com.
All right, great. So, in closing, Matt, you've given us a lot of great advice today. I really appreciate your research and that you're being on the show and giving us a lot to think about this morning. Listeners can put any questions for Matt in the comments section below. And as always, the show is made in hopes that never again will the truth be lost in translation. Remember to do your own research and come to your own conclusions. This is Simone signing off for today.